Hello, everyone. Thank you for connecting in today. We're going to go ahead and get started because we only have 30 minutes for today's webinar. So my name is Kai Larson. I am the Marketing and Communications Director for EcoAct, an Atos company, and for the Net Zero Transformation practice at Atos in Southern Europe. So we've organized this webinar today on climate risk and adaptation. This is part of CDP's Bitesize Sustainability webinar series in partnership with their Gold Accredited Solutions Providers, of which EcoAct is one. So we'll start off today. I'm just going to give you an idea of the agenda for today's event. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we'll start off with a brief introduction to EcoAct. Then we'll move on to talk about why it's important to tackle climate risk, and we'll tell you a little bit about our approach. Then we'll talk to Getlink Group. We'll hear about how they've incorporated climate risk into their strategy. And then we'll finish up with some key advice for any organizations that might want to integrate climate risk into their own strategy. So just a few key bits of information before we begin. This webinar is being recorded. Recording of the webinar and a copy of the PowerPoint slides that you'll be seeing today will be shared with all registered participants. Feel free to ask questions at any point during the webinar using the Q&A function in Zoom. We will probably not have time to address your questions live today because, again, we only have 30 minutes, but we will take the time to respond to all the questions that we receive, and we'll share our responses in a follow-up email after the webinar. Next slide, please. I'd like to now issue a warm welcome to our two speakers for today. First of all, Véronique Mariotti, who is Senior Manager on Climate Risk and Adaptation for EcoAct Southern Europe, and Vincent Ducrot, who's Environmental Director of Getlink Group. So thank you both for joining us here today, and now I will hand over to Véronique.
Many thanks, Kai. So I'll start with a quick introduction to EcoAct. EcoAct is part of the Atos group, and we are an international climate consultancy and carbon project developer. We have around 260 employees all over the world, with offices in Paris, London, New York, Barcelona, Montreal, Munich, Milan, and in Kenya. Regarding CDP, EcoAct supported 110 CDP responses for 81 clients in 2021. And our clients made up 6.5% of the CDP A list in 2021. Regarding climate risk assessment, we worked with more than 60 clients over the past 6 years. And by doing so, we gained a unique climate risk expertise in various sectors, among them energy, transport, construction, agro-industry, textile, tourism, finance, etc. Now, with our new journey within Atos, we are leveraging our digital capabilities in order to develop at-the-edge digital climate services to ease climate reporting for our clients, but also to accelerate decision-making. So why is that important to accelerate decision-making? In the next slide, please. If you're here today, I'm sure you've seen already this figure coming from one of the latest IPCC reports, and this sentence: climate change is a threat to human well-being and the health of the planet. We are currently at a crossroads. We can either take a redder road, which would lead us to a high carbon, high temperature world with a lot of climate hazards, or we could take greener roads that would lead us to a more resilient and low carbon society. But whatever the road, there will be impact for companies, and it has already started. Next, please. As a taste, the carbon price in the EU ETS was close to €100 per ton CO2 in early 2022, which had direct cost of several billion euros for energy producers, but also indirect costs for energy consumers. In next, there was also flooding in Germany last year, in July 2021, which cost around 2 billion euros to the reinsurance sector. And last but not least, heat stress as the heat dome, you might remember, in US in June 2021. Heat stress causes every year 100 billion euros of productivity loss in the US. So clearly, it's really important to accelerate climate action right now. But the question is how to accelerate climate action. And in the next slide, I will go through this element. So economic actors need to protect their activities. They also can provide solutions. But if you're part of CSR teams, you know that there are some challenges you can encounter when you want to really accelerate climate action. And by working with our clients over the years, we found those 4 elements that were challenges. The first one is to onboard beyond the CSR department. It's not always easy to convince your strategic or operational colleagues of the urgency to take action. A second element is that you don't want to have another reporting process on top of the others that exist in your company, and so you want to integrate this climate action in existing processes. A third element is that actually climate risk assessments are a complex problem. There are various scenarios, various data sources, and it's not always easy to translate information in an easy way. And last but not least, we see a need in our clients to become more and more autonomous on these climate challenges in order to facilitate their action monitoring across the years. If we go next slide, thanks. To answer to these problems, we have several solutions at EcoAct. The first one is a simple 4-step approach to tackle this climate risk assessments. The first step is where we actually define the objective of the project, the scope, and this is where we onboard the main stakeholders, your internal stakeholders in this approach. And when necessary, we can even perform some outreach on climate challenges when it's necessary. The second step is the risk mapping. This is where we provide an overview of all climate-related risks and opportunities that can impact your company. And this is where we try to make it adapted to your in-house risk management system. We adapt our risk scales to your in-house risk management system. On the third step, which is about risk quantification, we choose the risks and/or opportunities that were the more material in the phase 2. And we refine the calculations. We use projections, several climate models projections, we use transition projections, and we refine the financial quantification in order to give you a precise diagnostics to take action. And you can go back. The last element is the action plan. When you have done the diagnostic, you need to define your climate ambition, to design your climate strategy, and we help you decline the strategy into a low carbon and resilient plan. So next, please. I give you 3 examples of tools that we have internally. One is on carbon pricing. We have an internal carbon pricing tool that provides country-level projections. And why is it interesting for you? It helps you prioritize where you could put into place emission reduction actions, for example, in which geographies you should prioritize this reduction. If you go next slide, if we are interested in visualizing climate hazards evolution, we developed a web platform that you can see here that provides different ways to visualize climate hazards for different scenarios, different time horizon, different climate hazard or indicators. I will just insist on one of the functionalities that I find interesting for accelerating climate action. Is that on the blue one, climate hazard visualization, you can actually see how frequency and intensity of the extreme climate hazard will change over time. And this is actually interesting to decide which type of adaptation option you will take. You won't make the same adaptation actions if the climate hazards change in frequency or in intensity. This platform, we can provide demo if you're interested. Please do not hesitate to contact me, and we will issue this product in September this year. You can go next. And last project I wanted to share with you is we provide also a really precise climate risk assessment at subsite level. So here is an example of what we can provide for climate heat waves problems. So, for example, on this map, you see the redder areas is where the heat waves are the more important because of the heat island effect, and this is where you can prioritize heat waves adaptation options. Once a diagnostic is done, we also have an in-house database of more than 50 adaptation actions. And what we have in this database is also to provide financial estimates of when you put this action into place. So this helps you to choose on these financial criteria also what actions you can put in place. So these were some examples of tools, but I'm here today with Vincent Ducrot, with whom we worked for climate risk assessment. And now it's time to hear of his story. And maybe as a quick introduction, Vincent, if you can provide an overview of what Getlink Group is and its climate strategy.
Sure, thank you, Véronique. Hi, everyone. It's a very high pleasure for me to be with you this afternoon to present the work done in partnership with EcoAct regarding the climate policy. In a nutshell, to present Getlink Group, basically it's a mother company of Eurotunnel. Maybe you have heard of the fixed link between the European continent and the United Kingdom. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. And basically, we are working in three main areas. First of all, it's Eurotunnel. We are a concessionaire and we offer transport services with a shuttle that you may use by a car or potentially with a truck. We also have a subsidiary dedicated to the rail freight, especially in France and Germany, and the only profitable rail freight operator, a private one in France. And we will be soon, after 6-year project, very happy and proud to be able to have another services, which is a Getlink subsidiary, full subsidiary of the group, being the new interconnector, power interconnector between the UK and Europe. I also put here a couple of figures to give you an order of magnitude of what company Getlink is. Basically, in the next slide, I just wanted also to give you an overview of what CSR is for us. Basically, in our DNA, meaning it's embedded in a 5-pillar approaching this CSR, and especially embedded also in the overall strategy. And environment being one of the core pillars, we will more focus obviously today. Basically, you have a low impact by nature, working on rail, working on existing infrastructure, and we are also currently enabling the decarbonization of the transport system in France, and basically more widely in Europe. But also by choice, we, from the inception of the channel, we have chosen from the early beginning electrical trains. Recently, we have drawn this cable to avoid marine and seabed disturbance. So really low impact in environment, but nevertheless, we wanted really to move forward and to have a renewed ambition. This is next slide, what we present as our climate strategy. I think it's a good example of an area where we have both I would say, legitimacy based on the low carbon performance, electrical train and valuable track record on environment, but also ambition to leverage our low carbon leadership. This is the case with renewed ambition and especially science-based target carbon reduction. It is also the fact that we openly work for the ultimate goal of being net zero by 2050. And this ambition being backed up by a very detailed action plan for intrinsic emission. But I think the third pillar of our climate approach, and it is really the focus of the discussion today, is supporting, again, this track record and this projection into the future to support ambition with a confirmed resilience and innovation about climate. And this has been basically allowed with an updated assessment of our resilience against physical, but also transition risk and opportunity that have been carried out in partnership with EcoAct last year. Véronique, we can't hear you.
Yes,
I think.
yes. So now that you presented Getlink, could you provide us more insights on what happened during this climate scenario analysis we managed together?
Sure. Basically, we can say that we can break this activity into 4 phases. The first step, we decided together to launch interviews, high-level interviews with key actors within Getlink across all businesses to identify key risks in a spontaneous way. We also wanted to involve an external expert. I think it's worth mentioning it. To enlarge confidence on the risk of the panels. In the second step, we wanted also to build up an overall mapping of physical and transition risk, and we can see in the next slide a couple of illustrations to depict a little bit some of the deliverables we constructed together. And based on this risk mapping, we decided together to go for a specific deep dive analysis, in a quite usual manner. And we identify some deep dive as well for physical risk as for transition risks. For the deep dive itself, again, structurous and robust approach by identifying specific scenario, defining declining scenarios, using and collecting existing data sets, confirmed by the internal teams, of course, and then calculation and analysis basically by EcoAct. If I wanted to give you an example to make this a little bit more concrete, hands-on, I wanted to mention potentially 2 main deliverables. First of them was the vulnerability analysis that we perform system by system. What does it mean? We decline all physical risks, hot days, rainfall, high windstorms, into local values applicable for Eurotunnel premises, both in Calais and in Folkestone. And then we identify the physical criticality against extreme scenarios on every single systems. This is what allows us to identify hotspots, to focus on specific system, and to give to the technical department an overview of all, I would say, weakness or strengths of different systems against climate hazards. And the other deliverable I wanted to mention is the very thorough analysis that has been carried out by EcoAct regarding the flooding risks. Not a seawater flooding risk, which has been dismissed based on very robust assumptions, but more on the, I would say, the watershed rainfall impact. And for this, EcoAct helped us identifying, based on topography data, based on a hydraulic internal model that they built for us, identify, the different levels of water, including also the water system we have in place, to identify basically the critical buildings, I would say, critical part of the infrastructure. It helps us again identify these hotspots. So basically, it gives you a flavor of what type of deliverables is the approach that we undertook with EcoAct.
Many thanks. So now, if you would like to insist for people that listen, what were the key success factors according to you of such a typology of study, and if there were any follow-up actions after this project?
Yes, I think this worth mentioning it. I think basically no rocket science, but the first point is like every study of this kind, to secure top management involvement, engagement, to be sure that everybody is aware, everybody makes one's workforce planning align with this assignment. To make sure also that we include the technical department. As you said, it's not a CSR only topic. It cannot be a CSR topic. It cannot be only tick the box exercise. I think it's very fruitful to identify lots of inputs useful for every type of organization. Maybe my third recommendation will be about time horizon. In our case, we identified that the climate hazards were quite similar, looking at 2030, 2050, at the end of 22nd century. But basically, it's very worth being very clear on it to adapt also the priority once delivering conclusions on the weakness of buildings or activities. I think what I take from there also is that the fact that this type of study help you identify we can say the no regret action, meaning some action that you are definitely sure could deliver value with a minimum cost, or at least a higher value at the end, irregardless of occurrence of the climate hazard. And I think definitely what you have to keep in mind, if I may suggest, is really that it's a long journey. The studies that we performed together were the first good pillar, but it cannot be the end story. We try to align also, of course, within this exercise to the TCFD recommendation. So it's a long-term pattern. This type of analysis shall feed every process of the company, operations, finance, strategy, and it really have to be kept in mind by everybody that it's a long story that we have to update, define action plan and roll out. Basically, this is what I mentioned, and potentially it will answer your second question regarding the follow-up. We have, of course, started identifying a detailed action plan. We have, like usual, tried to identify the short-term must action, the mid-term action, and the long-term action. To give you examples of these actions, we have based on the hydraulic model, decided to go further into the building by building analysis, the critical analysis on the hotspot building. So it gives you a lot of detailed sub-action plans behind to be monitored. And as a long-term action plan, let's say we have reviewed the technical specification that we include when defining a new building, a new project, making sure that conceptually we incorporate in the design this type of climate hazards, this type of thinking, to make sure it is not a mitigation action, but more anticipation and adaptation for the future. And potentially also a detailed analysis. Yes, we decided to go through more into deep dive, specifically on temperature, and based on your models and your ability to go to the fine models, climate modelings, we were able to gather additional information, temperature information useful for our tunnel activities. Did I answer your question?
Yes, many thanks, Vincent. Any last advice you would like to share with your peers if they had to start this this sort of climate risk study?
Yes, I think so. On top of the key success factor I briefly mentioned, I think maybe two recommendation, hands-on, very pragmatic one. I was happy to be able to follow the, let's say, the usual risk management framework that we have in the company. You know, the mapping, the level of impact, of likelihood, the risk mapping habits. I think it's very key to make sure that we follow the same approach as for every other risks. It helps give a more robust approach. It helps people embark in the study and appropriate about the tool. And potentially a second recommendation that I give man is that it's not to be underestimating that we have to work with the financial teams, and I think to be able to plan some time with the financial experts for the deep dive, or even for the high-level scenarios, to have an approach in assessing the finance impact of every topic within dedicated workshop. When you take time really to assess the scenarios, yeah, first defining together the scenario, and then to assess, to capture your main KPI, usual financial KPI, to assess the risk and opportunities. I think it's really a time that counts with high value time, and it has not to be underestimated. Could be two recommendations I can share today.
Many thanks, Vincent. Kai, how do you want to proceed on the last 2 minutes we have?
Indeed. So thank you both for your time today. It's been really interesting, at least for me. I hope it has been for all of you as well. We only have 2 minutes left. We did receive a few questions, but I think that they will require more than 2 minutes to be properly addressed. So I think it's probably best that we close out now. We'll take the time to address your questions. Again, thank you to the participants who asked questions. They've been really interesting to read through as they come in. So we will take the time to send them to both Véronique and to Vincent so that they can properly respond, to take the time. And we will send out the recording of this session, the slides that were presented, and the answers to all of your questions in a follow-up email to all the registered participants. So thank you again for everyone who tuned in today. Thank you to Véronique and to Vincent for your time. And feel free to reach out to EcoAct or to Atos if you have any questions about our climate services, our digital capabilities. We would be happy to be in touch, and we look forward to hearing from you. So
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Vincent. Thank you, Véronique. It's been great to have you both.
Many thanks, Kai.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Goodbye.